The most hotly contested election of the Trump era so far happens tomorrow in Georgia. And if the polls are right, the most recent of which was released Friday, then Democrat Jon Ossoff will likely get the most votes in a race for Georgia's 6th congressional district. It's a House seat recently vacated by Tom Price, the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, and before that, held by Newt Gingrich for 20 years. Ossoff needs to capture 50% of the vote to prevent a runoff in June and win the seat outright. And because of scattered Republican support and an influx of money to Ossoff, it's not out of the question entirely. There are 18 candidates vying for the House seat, 17 of which are Republicans, a problem for the GOP that the Daily Beast was apt to point out. Quote, the monster field has split money, airtime, and enthusiasm between the Republicans. Another problem is that Ossoff's campaign has raised more than $8 million since January. And unlike last week's special election in Kansas, a race the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee largely avoided, this time in Georgia, they're playing to win.
Hi, I'm Samuel L. Jackson. There's a special congressional election on April 18th. What can you do? Go vote. Remember what happened the last time people stayed home? We got stuck with Trump. We have to channel the great vengeance and furious anger we have for this administration into votes at the ballot box.
It is a race being run as a referendum on President Trump. And this morning, right on cue, the president entered the fray with a baseless tweet of his own. The super liberal Democrat in the Georgia congressional race tomorrow wants to protect criminals, allow illegal immigration, and raise taxes. Ossoff responded with a statement that reads in part, while I'm glad the president is interested in the race, he is misinformed. Joining him now, Michelle Goldberg, columnist for Slate, who's in Atlanta, whose latest piece is called Make Donald Trump Furious Again. Georgia's special election could be a devastating blow to the president. Michelle, what is your sense reporting down there of how this race is taking shape?
So it's obviously really hard to say from, anecdotally whether somebody gets 46 or 50% in the vote tomorrow, right? I mean, the energy reminds me of Obama in 2008. I mean, you talked about the DNC pouring money here, or the DCCC putting money in here. But what's much more apparent on the ground is the incredible, almost fanatical volunteers. You had 900 people out knocking doors just yesterday. I think they've had 4,000 volunteers so far. The vast majority of them are local, mostly local women. I keep meeting women who tell me sort of the same story over and over again, which is that they've never been politically involved before. They woke up the day after Donald Trump was elected and they were shattered, and they kind of poured that into political activism. And now they're taking these skills that they've learned, on the PTA, and just devoting themselves. I mean, they're just working around the clock to try to do this.
That is fascinating, and a fascinating profile. We should say, so the district is interesting. It was a district, one of those districts that Hillary Clinton outperformed Barack Obama, right? So Trump did worse than he did than Romney in that district.
Yeah, much worse.
He only won it by 1.5 points. It's a fairly affluent suburban district. And, there's this Ossoff ad, which I want to play, because to me it sort of boils down part of the message, which is sort of rerunning the Hillary Clinton temperament attack on the president. Take a listen.
Imagine you had 30 seconds to make a life or death decision affecting thousands of Americans. That's what we expect of our president. Sound judgment. That's why it's so concerning to see President Trump act impulsively. He's not only embarrassing us on the world stage, he could start an unnecessary war. I'm Jon Ossoff, and I approve this message because I'll work with anybody to do what's right for our country. But we can't let Donald Trump put us at risk.
So that's sort of the message there. That sort of temperament idea, I feel like from the reporting I've read suggests it has more traction in that district than maybe it did other places.
Right. I mean, this is a district unlike, Kansas, which is another race where Democrats had an unexpectedly strong showing, which was maybe a district with more of a kind of Bernie Sanders-friendly profile. This is, like you said, it's a really affluent suburban district. It has the highest education levels of any district in the state. These are kind of when the Hillary campaign had this idea that they were going to pull affluent suburban women into the campaign, and it would make up for maybe the defection of some blue-collar, white working-class voters. That didn't work nationwide, but this is actually one of the places where that came very close to working. And so you have a lot of women, again, I mean, people really spoke to me about them feeling like Trump is a threat to their children's future. You know, they are kind of morally outraged in a way that reminds me of the Tea Party. It reminds me of things I've read about Phyllis Schlafly's,
right,
you know, grassroots armies. You know, I spoke today to a woman, a 44-year-old Army veteran, who was saying, you know, I have a 17-year-old and a 23-year-old, and I have to worry about them getting drafted.
You know, there's also this sense in which Ossoff is running this kind of national referendum on Donald Trump. But he's also been fairly Sphinx-like in like what exactly Jon Ossoff is standing for. My sense is that he thinks that's enough to just essentially channel this energy without giving away too much.
Well, they don't say that. When you talk to them, and I think they have to say this, they'll say, no, we're running a local race on local issues, and we're talking a lot about, you know, technology development and improving the local economy. But it's pretty clear that this has become a national referendum. I mean, it's the reason that we're talking about this on the show. It's the reason people have poured money into the race from all over the state. It's the reason that you have Trump people, you know, veterans of the Trump campaign working on behalf of Bob Gray, who's sort of the Trump candidate in the race, right? I mean, and it's the reason that a lot of these, you know, a lot of the people who are out volunteering for Ossoff, they really like him. He's, you know, he speaks elegantly. He's very considered. He has some of the qualities of a young Barack Obama, in terms of his kind of thoughtfulness. But they are really here to send a national message to Trump.
It's only going to get more intense if it does go to runoff, although there's a possibility that if people vote tomorrow, that they could avoid that as well. Michelle Goldberg, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.